Mainstay Insurance is an independent brokerage that specializes in employee benefits for small and mid-sized firms, and generally in the Greater Toronto area. They often work with firms with unusual situations that other brokers do not have the experience or expertise to handle, such as US-based companies that are starting up in Canada, firms with as few as 2 staff, and those with higher than average ages or unusual industries or occupations, I guess, that we fall into the higher than average ages category. Mainstay's goal is to provide their clients with fairly priced benefits. They often do not offer the lowest prices in the marketplace. In fact, they guarantee that their clients won't have the lowest prices each year, because the cheapest price today often ends up with the highest renewal rate increase tomorrow. Dave is also the founder of the Canadian Group Insurance Brokers. CGIB is the only broker-focused group benefits association in Canada. They specialize in bringing together the best and brightest in the employee benefits industry to discuss current issues, trends, and tips for success with regular in-person meetings and online communication tools. We are now booking webinars through the end of the year, as I said, and dates are being added. But if you know of anyone else who we should be interviewing, if you would contact me, please, and let me know, I'd appreciate it. We don't have a monopoly on knowing people, and there are an awful lot of very, very good agents in this business who I don't know. Good morning, David. Wait, one more thing. I apologize. Mr. Ruda has not been able to join us this morning, and so I'll be doing the interview with David. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to see you. And it's sunny out finally.
Yeah, we'll take it.
So, Dave, this was not your first career. You came to this business after being successful in a couple of other things. Tell me why you chose insurance.
Yeah, so I think this is my 4th career. I really thought I'd be in the sailing industry and worked in manufacturing distribution of sailboats and in that for a few years. And then I got into the automotive industry working with Magna and other automotive OEM manufacturers in rubber and plastics. And that was going to be it for life. I was convinced I was pigeonholed. And then things changed and I started into the not-for-profit sector with chambers of commerce and boards of trade doing membership sales, which led me to the Chamber of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, just learning about it through osmosis. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever ended up changing industries or careers again, it would be group insurance and I'd start my own brokerage. And I was lucky enough to be fired just around my 30th birthday. And we're just kind of been rolling ever since then. So it was kind of my 4th career, and this one's been lasting pretty well with 28 years behind me. So yeah,
I guess you're an instant overnight success in 28 years.
Well, yeah, it doesn't just happen.
So Dave, before this, you worked with community groups, didn't you? Or with what did you?
Yeah, not-for-profits, mainly chambers of commerce and boards of trade. So I did membership sales. That's where I learned the sales side of things a little bit. And we also did a bunch of event management. So we ran everything from breakfast meetings to annual awards night dinners. And so I kind of ended up getting some training on both sides of things. And both, I mean, obviously the sales helps in the insurance, and the event management ended up being very useful when it came to CGIB and that group's growth and evolution.
Okay, so 28 years ago,
yeah,
as a mere teenager,
pretty much,
you joined the business. And why group insurance?
Yeah, it's funny. I've never liked the insurance industry. I probably kind of like everybody else, every other consumer out there that kind of feels like too much is sold too wrong to too many. But what I saw through the chambers and boards and as in my role there was a lot of small businesses that needed benefits. And they were being underserved. The chamber plan does a good job, but there really wasn't somebody you could reach out to if you were small. If you were big, everybody wanted you, but if you were small, there wasn't a whole lot of specialists in the area. So I said, okay, well, let's just zero right in on that. So my start was a bit unique compared to most. I never came through the career agency system. I never came in through, the life side of things or investment side. I went straight into group. In fact, I think I maybe sold 10 life policies in my entire career. And that was more at the very beginning to keep my sponsor happy because we just started level 1, 2 sponsoring in Ontario, more than it was an intent to actually sell insurance. So it was a very focused decision to kind of hit that underserved market.
28 years ago, I don't remember a lot of independents in the group insurance market.
They were around. They just kind of were well hidden and not very active. So in the early years, I got a lot of leads from the insurance companies because they would get calls direct. They wouldn't write direct, especially a 2, 3, 4, 5 life group. And so they would call up and say, hey, will you call this person back? They don't understand group insurance and they need somebody to help them understand it. And so I would make those calls, and a lot of them resulted in nothing except some good learning on my side. But many of them did end up being clients, and some are clients to this day. So it's quite a few over 25-year clients now.
Well, a couple of years into your career, I remember that you started something that I knew as the Group Benefits Guide breakfast.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Yeah. So the idea started because the insurers at that point had kind of stopped education. So there used to be a lot of events. Like the career agency was famous for it, but for the independents, there wasn't kind of a lot. So I thought, okay, if we can just get 4 or 5 people together at a table to share best ideas and best practices and help each other solve each other's problems, that collaborative groupthink would be a positive thing. So I started with a few guys that had helped me get in the business, who I had, called, sometimes daily looking for information. And I figured if I can keep abusing them and take them out for breakfast, then maybe they'll keep answering questions. And it kind of just grew from there. And we got up till we had several hundred people on the breakfast list, and they kind of grew from in Markham, where I was located at the time, to Newmarket, to Ajax, to Oakville. They were kind of all over, and they kind of expanded and contracted as needs kind of went up and down. And yeah, it was an idea just to help each other out, and I didn't realize at the time that's not a common thing in our industry.
So you had a policy at the time that you bring an idea to the meeting. How did that work out?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The model started out with, like, once we kind of grew and had a few regulars and everything, that if we could put 20 people at a table, 20 advisors, and everybody brought their best idea and gave it away to their competition, the other 19 at the table, and they bring their biggest problem and trying to find a solution, then at the end of the breakfast, you should theoretically walk away with 19 great ideas from the other people and 19 solutions to your problem, of which there's probably only 3 or 4, but like lots of good discussion. And so in my mind, that was a no-brainer. I mean, like, if you walk away with a 19-to-1 return on investment, your breakfast was, more than well paid for. But I realized that's not the way that people think. People go, well, I don't want to sit across from my competition and give them a great idea, even if it means I get 19 back from the other people. And so very quickly, I realized if you weren't pushing people and championing, is that a word? The whole idea, that they'd fall apart. So, when I stopped going, you'd have, the numbers would start to dwindle and dwindle, and you kind of go, oh, geez, go back and go, okay, come on, let's start talking more and start sharing more. And so it's been a learning experience. But I will say that CGIB, the culmination of those breakfast meetings, there are more sharers in our business, more informal mentors, more, almost apprenticeships kind of going on than probably anywhere else in the industry. In a loose kind of way. It's not overly structured, there's no demands, but it just organically happens.
Okay, so we'll come back to CGIB.
Yeah.
But tell me, you've always seemed to me to be an information junkie, particularly knowledge about the business. When did that start?
Somewhere around birth, probably. It's not just about the business. I mean, my wife and kids would say I'm full of more useless information than anybody else. And I would say you probably rival me in that, but maybe I'm a close second or third. I hate not knowing things. So when somebody challenges me and says, you can't do something or you don't know something, that's my cue to go and dig in. And one of the great secrets of CGIB is that people think I'm giving away everything, but I'm learning from everybody. So we have members that will bring a question, a case, a problem, and go, what do you think? And I'll go, I don't know the answer. And I hate to say I don't know the answer. So I say, sorry, I don't know the answer. Give me a day, and start, digging and calling and searching and asking. so that I know the answer next time. And so that has resulted in me being quite lucky in that I don't have to make all the mistakes. I don't have to learn everything, just on my own. I've got hundreds and hundreds of teachers and 5,000 years of experience sharing stuff with me every day. So very lucky.
But you also do a lot of championing of solutions, particularly with government and with industry associations.
Yeah, that's kind of evolved out of it all as you find flaws and mistakes and wrongs, I guess. And I learned long ago that the advocacy in our industry is not very successful. Group benefits, first of all, is the minor part, the 1% of 1% of financial services. So we're probably kind of listened to a little bit less than anybody else. But we found things, whether it's how insurers treat women on maternity leave. We had some real big gaps, many that were actually illegal in many of the provinces that needed to be fixed. And it was kind of just pointing out the problem and identifying the solution and then shaming everybody into doing the right thing more than anything else. We've had kind of misguided projects like G19 in our industry, and in Ontario, the Trillium Drug Program, which insurance companies paid all the claims wrong for well over 20 years, and to this day kind of continue to do so. That you try and kind of make that work better, both for our clients and for the industry and the advisors that work in it. So that kind of rooting for knowledge and rooting for things to be done the right way, I think has just kind of evolved and grown together along the way.
I seem to remember you telling me at some point about a client that you had or that you made, quite a large client, because of Trillium, because they didn't understand and they wanted information. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was a kind of a unique case. They're actually speaking at one of our upcoming events in Toronto. So it was an employer in Ottawa, and they had a challenge with high cost drugs. And so they were very inquisitive, and they reached out to Google to find answers. And they kept finding articles about Trillium and how it integrated or didn't integrate with benefits and how to handle high cost drugs. And their advisor and their insurer at the time weren't kind of providing much help. So I received an email saying, "Hi, I'd like to buy an hour of your time to talk to you about Trillium and our problem." And so I called the person up and said, "Okay, you don't have to buy it. You can just talk to me. Like, what's going on?" And what we found was the past advisory firm they'd changed, it was 140 life group, I think at the time. And they changed their stop loss from $10,000 to $25,000 for high cost drugs. And in the first year of making that change, they had 5 claims, I think it was, that were over $25,000. So the not-for-profit employer, being tight on funding and everything else, was now faced with, and it was an ASO plan, with $125,000 of experience and bills showing up that were all ongoing claims. And we helped them work through a solution and integration, and that was it. It worked incredibly well. We're now in 2 or 3 years, and they actually have a surplus, and are just thrilled. But it was them doing the research and finding all these articles in Benefits Canada and different places that led them to me. So it was a pretty cool relationship.
Articles, that's interesting. So how much of your business comes from people finding you through articles?
You never know, because you never know if it's they're finding you that way or they're just doing their due diligence and kind of research after the fact. I would say not a lot. I would say most of my clients are referrals through HR people, bookkeepers, existing clients, past clients, sometimes the insurance companies. And I think all the articles, the LinkedIn posts and stuff reinforce that you're out there. I don't know if they're just on their own a great source of leads. Like I don't have a marketing plan that gets hundreds of leads coming in every month or anything like that. But every now and then it works. And I'm only looking to add a few clients, here and there. I'm very selective in who I take on.
Okay, remind me, I want to come back to the structure of your clientele.
Sure.
It's unusual, I think, for HR people to recommend an insurance agent. How does
Not
that
really. Yeah, not really. So in the large size companies, I don't know, maybe not. I deal mainly in the small and mid-size. And so if I have a great solution with a client and the HR person, slash plan administrator, whatever their official role is, if they then move on to another firm and go, oh, this is a mess, I want to bring somebody in, I know, they will quite often reach out to their old advisor, their past advisor. So I wouldn't say it's unusual at all. In fact, most advisors freak out when a new HR person comes in, because the next thing you're expecting is an agent of record letter that you've lost and they're going to use their old one. So it does happen quite a bit. And we have some that are HR consultants that are working for, 10, 20, 30, 40 clients. And so when they have a problem, they'll say, hey, here's a guy who works in small group and maybe can help you out. Again, it's not a ton, but every now and then all these different lead sources pass people along. So and they tend to be really good at pre-screening people for me. So they tend to send people that are kind of aligned with the way I do things, which is not quite the norm for our industry. So I always kind of ask, I go, have you been warned first? And with new prospects, and they go, yeah, we've heard about you. So I figure that's a pretty good sign.
But I remember that you once said that your goal was to sail half the time and work half the time. How's that working out for you?
Kind of. So I had two success factors when I started the business, and I figured I was going to start out right this time. So I've done a few different businesses and in lots of different employee roles. So I said I'm going to start out and have two goals for success. One is going to be a level of business to replace the income that I had in my past job and keep me happy. And that was not a moving target. It's just a fixed target. I passed that 20 years ago plus, but it's just a fixed target. The other was I wanted 2 weeks of vacation when I started, which I thought was, fair, and just add half a week every year. And I figured that wouldn't be so bad. So this year, I think it's 15 weeks and I'm a little bit behind. I think I've only got 13 out of the 15 weeks booked, either away or off. But that was the success idea, was to kind of grow. So I'll never retire was the idea. I'll just be permanently on vacation at some point. Now, those in the audience that kind of do the math are going to go, hold on, that means you're not retiring until you're 102 or something. So it's going to fail at some point. And but it works pretty well. And when I take on new clients, they have to know that before we kind of sign the final paperwork. So I just kind of say, you got to buy into that, because that's who I am. And whether it's I'm off sailing or whether I'm on vacation or just at home with kids, grandkids, neighbors, whatever, that's my time.
There was one time we were talking and you said, I won't be able to talk with you for the next 2 weeks because I'm sailing across the Atlantic.
Yeah, you get that all the time, right?
I'm sorry?
You get that from your providers all the time, don't you?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of people that tell me they're sailing across the Atlantic on little boats.
Yeah.
So how does that work out for you? And how does that influence? Because you wrote a book about it. It's over my shoulder. It's over yours.
Yeah.
About what you know, what you've learned. How does the sailing influence how you practice insurance?
So I think we all have things that we bring to the industry. And so my background in sailing, and I think that so much of it is so similar. Like what we're trying to do on a sailing trip is get to the destination in one piece with everybody and as whole as possible. And the journey, you never know what you're going to have along the way. I mean, in sailing, it could be storms, it can be no wind, it can be anything. And the journey and benefits is the same. So what are we trying to do in sailing? We're trying to plan ahead, look for the hazards, avoid the hazards as much as possible, anticipate all that type of thing. When we get to the benefit side of things, we're kind of doing the same. So, it's different kind of hazards. It might be disabilities or high cost drug claims or liability and risk for the employer. But that kind of forward thinking, forward planning really serves me well. And I don't want clients for a year. Like I don't want short-term fixes. I want you for life. And so again, that way we can kind of plan long-term, educate long-term, and kind of try and get our goals kind of aligned all the way through. So yeah, so sailing helps.
So the alignment of goals between you and your clients seems to be a very important part of who you choose as a client. Do you choose your clients?
I choose my clients.
You.
Yeah, they have to choose me too, but it's a relationship, and it's kind of like dating. So if you don't trust each other, or you aren't comfortable with each other, then in my mind, you just don't work together. And in the early days, I was hungry, and I took on my fair share of clients that I regretted at some point. And we fired some along the way. I mean, over the years, I probably fired 10 or 12 clients because it was a bad fit. I probably take about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 that are referred across now. And that's not to say the other ones are not great prospective clients. They might just be big or unionized or misaligned. I had one of my clients who he sold his practice, his business to a larger firm, and their CFO called me in and said, like, we want you to do our benefits because he's spoken so highly, and we like what you report and what you do. And I met with the CFO. He took me out for lunch and we had a nice chat. And halfway through the meeting, I said, if you really want me to take over your benefits, and he said, we do, just I'll sign that agent of record letter. And I said, okay, then you have to do 3 things. You have to put everybody on the plan and make it mandatory. You have to remove those independent subcontractors. And we have a few taxation problems that have to kind of get cleaned up to stay on side. And he said, yeah, we're not going to do that. We like providing benefits to our independent contractors, and we don't want to put everybody on the plan if we don't think they're worthy of the plan. So I said, okay, that's your prerogative, and thank you very much. And he said, okay, give me the agent of record letter. I'm like, no, I can't work with you. Sorry. I don't ever want to have to testify against you, and I never want to be in a situation where your employees are potentially going to sue you for something that you did wrong. So thanks very much, but no thanks. And that was 150 life group. So it wasn't small for me at all.
Well, this independent contractor thing has been a real bugaboo, not just for you, but for the business. Tell me why it's a problem.
Well, okay, so I'm not a tax expert, and I'll say that right away. But the reason that employee benefits are tax-free benefits, non-taxable, is CRA kind of grants them the special status as long as the people participating are employees, spouses, common law spouses, same-sex spouses, and eligible dependents. Nowhere does it say, oh yeah, by the way, independent contractors, partners behind partnerships, holding company, like it's very clear. And in fact, the insurer contracts are very clear when they say who's eligible. A full-time employee working a permanent full-time employee working so many hours a week, resident in Canada, usual place of business, and so on. So most insurance companies, and I know there is one that will break all the tax rules, but most insurance companies will not change that wording for eligibility. They may change the name of a class to independent contractors, which is only another nail in the coffin, really. But the actual contract says you can't put them on. And yet we all turn a blind, not we all, a lot of the people in the industry turn a blind eye to it. And I don't want independent contractors to be deemed employees unless that is the intent. So if you have an independent contractor and you provide them with employee benefits, problem one, their booklet says who's eligible in the contract, an employee. Well, aren't you just putting another nail in the coffin of defining this independent contractor as an employee? And the insurance companies went one further, and their general rule is we'll add them to the plan as long as they work 100% for you, get all their income from you, you control their time and everything else, which is basically defining them as an employee. And that's the problem. It gets a little bit messier when you find out about personal service business designations and the worst tax situations you can have in Canada resulting from PSBs. So to me, it's always been, let's follow the rules. Let's keep everybody arm's length. Nothing wrong with independent contractors. I mean, they're an essential part to a lot of businesses. Let's just keep them arm's length from the plan.
You've done a lot of work on booklets for your clients, haven't you?
What do you mean by booklets? Like
Well, that's a good question. On the disclosure to employees, and what is disclosed and how it is disclosed by the insurer and the employer.
I don't know. I mean, like, yes, we over-educate maybe our employers quite a bit to share stuff with our employees. But I wouldn't say we do anything over the top around the booklets and stuff like that. We definitely support kind of on the HR side when they do policy manuals and booklets and that type of thing. But in the actual benefit booklets, most of them for my clients are small. They're pretty canned. We can't do too much to to alter them really, as long as they fit.
I attended one of the CGIB meetings just before the pandemic, as a matter of fact, immediately before the pandemic.
And thank you for being a part of the panel or the presenters. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, but I learned something. I mean, I like to go to things where I learn something. I'm a bit of an information junkie as well. And one of the things was that everyone was talking about, and at your, I think, insistence, about how insurance companies were trying to change the contracts midterm and how that was a problem. Will you discuss that?
Sure. Didn't think we'd go down the road on that one, but yeah. So the way I look at this is we as advisors only sell one thing. We sell this contract, this piece of paper that's a promise. And Rob Crowder from the Benefits Trust he's the one that's instilled this thought in my head forever. So all we're selling is a promise, and it's a promise by the insurance company to pay a claim to the employee and a promise by the employer to pay the premium and so on. And so when you sit down and you look at it, you go, okay, every year we sit down and we sell the policy and then we renew the policy every year. And every year the insurance company sets their pricing based on what they think is going to happen through the year. And I would say most employers think that a group insurance contract is a 1-year contract. And that's a beautiful thing because rates are usually more or less guaranteed, except for regulation, taxation, or legislation changes. But it's not. Actually, each group insurance contract is a 30-day contract, which can be terminated or changed every 30 days. And so that's a problem in and of itself. We also have the little kind of, use your term, bugaboo, where, the insurance companies can just change it kind of as they choose. Now, in the past, that wasn't the case. A lot of the contracts had wording saying you could only change it when the employer asked and the insurance company agreed, or when there was legislation, regulation, or a renewal. Well, very quickly, insurers found it was very difficult and time consuming to wait 12 months to make changes. It was so much easier just to make broad overnight changes. But to me, that shows a total lack of respect for the contract you sold. And some of these things are very clearly just clarifications. I mean, we've seen things on pronouns and changing male, female, and gender and different things, which are, I would say, not inconsequential. They're definitely important, but they're not changing how claims are being paid. But the problem is lots have been. So we've had insurers come in and put in drug caps partway through the year. We've had different drug watch programs and stuff that actually embedded that every time there's a new drug released to the market, the insurance companies are allowed to change the rates. They don't have to wait till the end of the month. Technically, they have to give 30 days notice, but they can do it anywhere along the line. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with us selling a contract that the insurance companies do not honor. And they would argue back and say, well, hold on, it says we can change it within 30 days notice. I'm like, yeah, so I don't think that makes it right. So I think it's better to do changes at renewal, but the horse is out of the barn and there's a stampede in how fast you can do changes. We've had some insurance companies making changes, 1, 2, 3 months in a row, not even all at once, just because it suited them. And I've got a problem with that. So I've tried to fight back on that one, but I feel like it's a losing game these days.
I guess it's clear that I'm having difficulty separating Mainstay at the practice and CGIB as far as you're concerned. How much of your time do you spend on CGIB? How much do you spend on sailing? And how much do you spend with Mainstay?
Yeah, so it depends on the time of year. But generally I'd say like half my time is Mainstay, a quarter of my time is CGIB and stuff affiliated with it, and a quarter is vacation or sailing or whatever. But like this time of the year where we're getting our schedules together and we've got a lot of events, we were just out in Halifax, we got Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver coming up. CGIB definitely takes a bit more time. But it's growing as people are getting back to in-person events. Yeah, I would say it's kind of roughly that half quarter model roughly. Yeah.
So kind of sticking with CGIB for a second. You share a lot of information, as you said, through CGIB. You have something I don't understand called a stack channel.
Slack, yeah.
Slack channel. What is that?
Yeah, so the original idea as CGIB grew was a hub and spoke kind of system. So the idea was if you had a question or a problem or a member did, you'd kind of reach out to me and then I'd connect you to the right person. And I'd say, call Lawrence about that LTD question with lawyers, or call this person for that out of country question. And I realized quickly that's not very scalable. I mean, I can only talk to so many people in a day. And I'm not always the right person. It might be somebody else who has better connections. As you said, we all have friends. We don't know everybody. So Chris Gorey, one of our members forever, was a great friend and supporter. Chris, I think it was maybe a year or two before the pandemic, we were talking about Slack, which I'd used for years in other uses. And he said, let's start one up. So he helped put it together for me. So what Slack basically is a kind of like a bulletin board system with channels where you can post a question or a comment or share documents. We have about 75 channels, like everything, individual LTD, industry news, regulators, whatever. And so then you can keep track and follow and watch and read, and kind of maybe like a more interactive FAO, if you will. And you can also do calls through it, chats through it, huddles through it, document pushing back and forth through it and everything as well. So it's pretty cool. We'll see stuff there. There'll be a new acquisition in the industry. It'll be announced on Slack, and 3 days later, the world will find out about it. Or there'll be a change from an insurance company, amendments coming up, and we'll get them all leaked and posted out so all the members know what's happening before the public does. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes it's like, oh, another thing to deal with. And it can be overwhelming. I mean, there is about 5,000 years of knowledge on that site. So, everyone's got an opinion, and lots are willing to share. And I always say, take it all with a grain of salt, because it's a place to start your learning, not the end of learning. So, if you see somebody say, hey, this is the answer, great, but go double check and make sure that it complies with laws and regulations and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Sharing documents is a big part of what you do with CGIB. There is a checklist that seems to be very popular that you created. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. About 25 years ago, Manulife actually was discontinuing a little bonus program they had for small group. And at the time, Barry Noble was the vice president, and Barry kind of apologized to the advisors and said, look, I'm sorry. We have, because of kind of our restructuring of the bonuses, we're getting rid of this little one. We're keeping the normal ones. So that's going to maybe hit you a little bit. But what we do have is an unlimited 1-year education budget. So we're going to send you to Langdon Hall in Cambridge. We're going to bring in HR experts. We're going to bring in employment lawyers and taxation experts and so on. And we're going to teach you everything you wanted to know about group. And there was, I'm not sure, maybe 30 or 40 of us there that were kind of the growing, maybe young guns at the time. And that changed my life. Elizabeth Forrester from Blaney McMurtry was the employment lawyer, and she talked a bit about how plan administrators have liabilities and areas of risk that are created not just by the benefit plan, but through employee engagement and so on. And it just stuck. And so I kind of put that together with the issue of leaving a client's or prospective clients. And I always had a wish that I'd said something that I'd forgotten. You go, oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have asked about that. So the checklist idea was already kind of started. And then I took all the learning from there and built it out, went back and had it vetted by taxation, accountant, HR people and everything. And that's been my big tool ever since. And it's kind of a review of what's required administratively and trying to keep people out of trouble. So it started with my clients for maybe a decade, and then I started sharing it at some of my first events, saying, here's a great tool you can build to solidify your relationships, to provide more value, to take the conversation away from being the cheapest and make it about adding real value and protection and so on. And so I think over the years, there's probably been about 1,000 people kind of go through the course, and some as many as 5 or 6 times. And they swear it's always changing, and it is. I mean, there's always new cases and new law, and we had originally, I think at the beginning, it might have been the first 25,000 of life insurance was tax free, and then it wasn't, and then AD&D became taxable. So there was all those little changes along the way. Yeah, it became kind of the core from how I grew my business originally, and it became the core of what I shared originally, and we're still doing it. Just did it in Halifax, about to do it in Calgary. Now we'll do another one in Toronto, so this year.
So it's a plan administrator checklist for group insurance brokerage.
Yes, or for their clients. Yeah.
And you share this with other brokers. So this goes back to your group benefit guy idea of sharing one great idea.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's the whole saying that, a rising tide floats all boats. We all get better together, and they're sharing back. And I've had people send their list back to me that they've built and said, "Oh, you forgot this, you forgot that. I would have added this. I would have added that," which is fantastic. I love to see that. And some we add and evolve the list, and some we go, "No, that's okay. That fits your practice. That doesn't fit my practice," or whatever. Yeah.
The corollary to that, of course, being that when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming without trying.
That's true.
But how about, what sort of other things do you share with the CGIB? What other forms or?
Everything, like whatever people want to know, we do. So, and it's not just me, it's all the members. So people share documents and templates and policies, and somebody posted yesterday saying, "I'm looking for an employee survey template to give to one of my employers to ask about their benefits. Does anybody have anything?" And I'm not a fan of surveying people because the results are always the same. We want everything. We want to pay nothing, and it's my way matters more than anybody else in the companies. But all these people will start sharing their documents, and if they're permanent kind of documents, we'll post them on the CGIB members only website. So spreadsheets and videos and different things that are timeless, maybe. And if there are things that are more, they have an expiry date, like it's, here's a ruling, but it's kind of dated, then it just goes on Slack and people share that way. And after a few months, it disappears. And that way it's not kind of hanging around with old data for too long.
Let's do a quick ad for CGIB. Tell me what it is, how many members there are, and what it costs per year and what you get.
Yeah. So CGIB is an education-based association around employee benefits. We're not an advocacy group. Any of the advocacy work that you see through CGIB is just me and our members doing it on our own. We just share it there. Membership is $500 plus tax for the year. It's prorated. Our year is September 1 to August 31st. So halfway through the year, it costs you half as much. We have about 350 to 400 members. We kind of ebb and flow through our renewal year. And they're from all across Canada, a lot from Southern Ontario, just because we started here. But we have some in the East and lots in the West. So that actually becomes a huge positive, because if you are an Ontario advisor and your client base is here, but you have a question about BC Pharmacare because one of your clients just opened up a small Vancouver office, you post a question and the crew out in BC or that are licensed and work there will answer the question. So the benefits are education. I mean, we do the events that you mentioned across Canada. We have the Slack channel, which is now the kind of the core place to share real time rather than waiting for the next meeting. But every 2 weeks or so, we do coffee chats, which are just a Zoom meeting where anybody can ask any question they want and just walk through cases or stories or problems. We do a newsletter semi-monthly that gives you all the articles you should read about group insurance. Might be lawsuits, HR, taxation, legislation, Benefits Canada, Life Health Pro, articles. So it's kind of curated content. As well, we promote events for everybody else that are group insurance focused. So the Gypsy Group Insurance Pharmaceutical Committee's meeting comes up in April. We'll promote that in the newsletter. So it's all about education, not just CGIB education, but group insurance education overall. About the only thing we don't do is product placements for the insurance companies. We have a few rules. If you're an insurance company or a provider of a service, you can't speak at our events. You can sponsor them. You can get your 2-minute ad time, but you're not allowed to be a speaker. And so that way it just kind of keeps it more technical and focused and so on.
And who are the members?
Mostly advisors, but it's open to anybody. So we don't say no. If you have an interest in employee benefits, join, but most are advisors. We have insurers and TPAs and PBMs and EAPs, and I'm sure if we look hard enough, we have an XYZ in there as well, or Z. Too many acronyms, I know, but really anyone from around the industry that is interested in the space. So in the past few years, we've seen groups that work exclusively in fertility benefits, for example, and they're just trying to understand the marketplace and what matters to advisors and their clients and so on. And because we don't have many employer associations that like that kind of deal with benefits, it's kind of hard to kind of go out and say, okay, employers, what do you need, or what do you want to know? So advisors are kind of the next best place. We even have some pharmaceutical companies join because they like to kind of stay up on what's going on. So it's not 100% advisors, but it's probably 95% advisors.
So you're still a young man. What are your plans?
This afternoon, you mean, or?
Oh, yeah, sure. You know, I've always believed that there were goals and there were objectives. So your goals are for the next 5 years and your objectives are longer term.
Long term. So I want to sail around the world, but not all at once. I want to do little tiny pieces at a time. But in the business world, I said I was going to stay until 75. My wife just recently retired, so I've now revised that down to 70. So that's 11 more years. I think that's kind of what I'll do, assuming health and everything else continues. I love this space. I mean, I love to learn. I love to share. I love my clients. I mean, I only have 45 or 50 clients. That's it. I have a small stable, and thank you for being one of them. And I learn from all of them all the time. And I believe that we're all pretty aligned. Not all the time. The world's not perfect. But I'm not planning on kind of going anywhere shortly. I've got an emergency succession plan. So if that, cross Atlantic sailing trip goes awry and I'm lost or missing for more than 60 days, my business gets sold, and the people that are willing to buy it know who they are and they know the price, and there's somebody to facilitate it. I don't have a firm, what do I do at 70? And because we have CGIB and Mainstay and a few other side hustles, it may actually be a stepped kind of retirement down the road.
Just so you know, 70 isn't as old as you think it is.
Oh, I know.
Just watch some of the people who we're interviewing, and most of us have difficulty retiring because I think the stimulation, the mental stimulation, the intellectual stimulation, the friendships, the camaraderie.
Yeah, absolutely. And you watch too many people retire and die, and I would just get too bored. I get stir crazy trying to make it through a weekend without looking at things or thinking or something. So I'm with you, and I mean I'm lucky enough. I guess I could sell Mainstay, keep CGIB running, so I could stay involved, or even sell CGIB and just be a speaker a little bit until I'm no longer relevant. And looking at some of the people that are out there, I might stay relevant for a little while.
Okay, so that's Mainstay. What about CGIB? What's the plan for it?
Yeah, so
You want to keep it going if you drop Mainstay, but what if?
Yeah, so I don't even have a short-term succession plan for CGIB right now. And I've had people offer to buy it, insurers and TPAs and different educational groups, but it's always been kind of not the way I wanted it to go. Like what they were looking for would change it into this monetized, weird, agent of the insurance companies, which I never quite wanted. So we have made some things death proof. So like Slack, Chris Gorey has the controls for it. So if I drop dead tomorrow, Slack will continue, the group will still carry on. It's the event management side of things and membership management of it that I'm gonna have to look for at some point. And it's trying to find somebody who would champion like me, who felt as passionately about sharing and caring and giving and helping and everything. And that's kind of hard to find. I mean, I can list tomorrow 20 advisors that I think would be worthy of my clients and my clients would be well served by. I have a hard time coming up with a list of 1 or 2 people that I think could keep CGIB running. And that's not an ego boost to me. That's just, it's a difficult little group. The people are great, but I mean, trying to kind of keep it running and flowing and staying relevant is sometimes a challenge.
Takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of thought.
Well, look at what you've done with FAO over the years and stuff. It should be a simple thing, you think, but it never really is. I mean, whether it's the technical, the funding, keeping things under control, it's all an issue.
And as you say, getting bored. So we do things like this, which need done, and you do a lot of what needs done. Are there things that you don't think were accomplished to your satisfaction that you would still like to work on in the future in terms of these regulatory or company type interactions?
There's some that I have kind of one. The Trillium integration program is the one that I find most frustrating. So when we found out that insurers had been paying claims wrong, originally I thought, oh, every insurer is going to jump up and down. They don't have to pay for these, $100 million plus of claims. And the Ministry of Health was very clear, we are first payer. It's just we're being trumped by the insurance companies. So I thought that would be just a no-brainer. I gotta stop using no-brainer, but because this is going to save them all this volatility. But no, you have to step back and realize insurance companies make money on paying claims, and they make lots of money on high-cost claims. So I kind of really we got so close. The province understood the problem. They actually started doing the programming to do point of sale adjudication of claims with Trillium. So at the pharmacy level, a big chunk of the cost would not be paid by the employer. It would be sent to Trillium. And we got down to a few months away from the release. The government changed. Everything was embargoed, or whatever the term the government uses when there's a changeover. And then the new government squashed it and just said, we're not going to go ahead with that. The core regulation has not changed, as far as I know, but they have interpreted it in many different ways and put in enough rules now that integration is very difficult at point of sale. So that's my big regret, was we got so close to saving Ontario employers now hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and I failed. And so that's one that I wish.
You failed. The government changed, and you were left hanging dry, high and dry. That's a little different from failing, my friend.
Well, to me, it was a failure. I've won most of the other ones, but I never got what I wanted at the end. So whether that was an unreasonable expectation, when you see the finish line and you trip with 3, meters to go, you kind of go, wow, I was close, but close doesn't count. So that's one. The other ones, I'm now starting to pick and choose the fights. I mean, some of these programs, like the LTD disability non-evidence maximum limit, it took 10 years or 12 years to win that fight and get all the insurance companies to agree on, keeping people whole and getting people the right coverage, which is
talk about that, because that's as time goes on within a plan, isn't it?
Yeah. So especially with small companies, it's more of an issue in mid-size than large. But so as a group grows in number of employees, the non-evidence maximum for long and short-term disability life insurance grows as well. And in the past, if you had an employee that was at that limit, they were medically underwritten for the extra, and they were declined, they would be held at that level. So now your group has grown, by 20 employees, and now there's a new level. Well, new employees were coming in at this level of coverage, and your old employees that have been there forever were at this reduced level. So I said, well, why don't we just move everybody up to the same level? It just seems common sense. And the insurance company's attitude was, no, we declined all these people because of health issues or bad risk. We don't want to provide them with coverage. So I said, okay, well then, if we move the case away to another company and then bring it back, you'll grandfather the coverage and bring him in at the new level. Well, yeah, of course we would do that. Well, if you're willing to lose it and bring it back again, how about we just don't lose it in the first place? And they went, no, that'll never happen. But it did. And I mean, it started with Great West at the time, now Canada Life. And they said, yeah, we're going to do this. And this is what's best for small business, and making sure there's equity between their employees. And I'm sure there was system things behind that as well. And then one by one, we surveyed everybody. We started a page, it's still there on the CGIB website, saying who would and who wouldn't. And over the years, we convinced one after another and used a little bit of shaming and a little bit of public humiliation to kind of say, oh, you're the last one. And eventually everybody kind of got in line. And so from an employer perspective, you're now on an even keel. I mean, whether it's a new hire or somebody that's been with you for 20 years when you first started the company, they're going to have access to the same base level, up to the same NEM as ever. So those ones were like simple wins, but they took 10 years, to like, we're just finishing that one. It's probably 12 years now since we started. So when I'm sitting there now looking at 10 or 11 years left in the business, I want to finish the project. I don't want to just get it started, and that's how far some of them drag out. So yeah,
Nothing that's worth doing is quick, it seems.
it's true. It's true.
Dave, you see all of your clients, if you can, if they're willing to see you. You see every client every year, don't you?
Either, yes. So either in person, which is definitely less since the pandemic, or by Zoom, or through phone call and email. I would say majority are now Zoom, and that was the pandemic in part. But through the pandemic, we also moved out of Thornhill, top of Toronto, about an hour and 15 minutes out to be on a lake here, so I can sail right outside my door. So everything's another hour to get into the city or whatever. And the other part is a lot of my clients aren't at their offices anymore, so they're working remotely. And so I'll say, okay, I can come into your office. I'm going to be in the neighborhood. And they're like, well, I'm not. I'm up at our place in Aurelia or something. And you go, oh, okay, we'll just do it by Zoom. But yeah, I think it's important to touch base every year. And I mean, you know, as a client too, it may be a quick meeting to kind of review the numbers. If there's new staff or there's changing situations involving, hires and mergers and acquisitions and things, it'll be a deeper conversation. That might involve, training for plan administration, but a lot of my clients have been, pretty well trained over the years, and they know when to ask for help. And in fact, I get some of the funniest questions. One of my favorites is a client I've had for over 25 years, and she said to me at a renewal meeting, I said, well, anything else I can do to make your life easier today? It was kind of a throwaway line, like intentional, but. And she said, well, as a matter of fact, yes. She goes, I have 3 things on my list. Do you want to help me with them? I said, I'll try my best. She said, okay, I need property and casualty insurance. And I need somebody to look at my fleet of trucks for our company. So I said, Derek Faulkner over at CRE, great guy. He's helped lots of my clients. I'll send you his number. She goes, oh, okay, great. So she said, well, okay, here's another one. I'm going to throw you a loop. She goes, my husband handmade all the windows in the back of our house. He's since passed away. They need to be replaced. They're now over 25 years old. Do you know a window manufacturer that can make custom-made windows in unusual sizes? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. Trimbo over in Vaughan is fantastic at that. They have their own manufacturing facility. I'll send you that information. She goes, okay, great. And here's the last thing, and it's a list. And I tons of things on it. She goes, this is my grocery list. Can you take care of that for me? And I said, yes. Longo's has delivery at home. I'll send you all the information, and you can order online today. So I get asked the silliest questions sometimes, but hey, we've got lots of clients and friends and associates. We can connect people, right? So you help out where you can help out.
That's wonderful. Tell me, how else has going virtual changed what you do and the way you do it?
Yeah, it's made me more efficient in time. Like, I mean, nobody likes wasting time in traffic or downtown. We've changed, things like sign off documents on renewal, which are, is another layer, another bit of a pain. But I mean, it's overall been, I think, pretty positive. I think a lot of people kind of hid from clients overall, and hid sometimes behind technology. But I think we've gotten past that. I think most people are pretty good with it. Like, I mean, I'm having Zoom calls with, 80-year-old union reps and stuff, and they're getting it. I mean, it doesn't mean it always works perfect. But I would say it's just overall, it's made life a little bit easier, and for everybody, more efficient and effective.
Dave, if you were to be able to give advice to somebody, whether they're in the business or not, somebody younger,
yeah,
what advice would you give?
Be a perpetual student, always be open to learning. And if you're coming into this business, whichever this business is, just specialize. It makes life so much easier. Just be, as you say, be 1 inch wide and a mile deep instead of a mile wide and 1 inch deep. once you specialize, once the world knows you are who you are, whether it's your brand or your brand is aligned with your specialty, it just makes life so much easier. And if you are willing to be a perpetual student, if you're willing to say, I'm ignorant, I don't know everything about everything, when you kind of are okay saying that, then you are so set up for success in the future, because that learning is just going to be ongoing and perpetual. Learn and specialize.
To believe it or not, that seems to be consistent advice so far across most, but not all,
Yeah.
people we've interviewed. And certainly I endorse it myself. Thank you, David. This has been very enlightening, and it's good to know that you really can succeed, provided you define success in your own mind.
Yeah.
And you're consistent.
Just keep doing it, do it right, and repeat over and over and over. It's just lather, rinse, repeat, right? The old shampoo line. And you taught me that. Just to be a shout out, I attended an event where you were speaking over 25 years ago, and I went, here's a guy who knows everything about what he's working in. And honestly, I kind of called BS on you and wrote down all these things. And later on, when I got back, I fact checked the perpetual learner. And I said, there's no way this guy knows this much about this stuff. And you did. And I went, okay, that's who I want to be like. So you played a great role at the very beginning of my career, as much as some of the other unofficial mentors, I'll call you.
I should say it's easy to be an inch wide and a mile deep. It's a lot more difficult to be a mile deep on 10 things.
Totally.
With that in mind, next week, I'm being interviewed. When we first started this project, I was recruiting other people to do the interviews, Barry Pascal, Paul Burbinier, Susan Sadamond, and so on, and Julian Wise. And they said, well, that's great, but we'll agree, provided you agree to be interviewed as well, because I tend to use these things as a way not to be on stage, despite doing this today. And so I'm being interviewed next week, and I'm being interviewed by Ted Pulsey, because Ted agreed to be interviewed himself, provided I agreed to be interviewed. And then when it came to me, I thought Ted would be a perfect person.
Quid pro quo, buddy.
Yes, that's exactly it. The week after, it's Neil Payton from Edge Benefits. Neil's had a fascinating history. Then Bob Fleischacker, Brian Mallard, Mario Malatesta, Mildred Davis, and we go on from there. So we have a great lineup through the spring and into the summer. I look forward to these interviews, and I thank you very much for joining us, David.
Thank you, Rob.
I'd like to thank Krista Barzo for assisting with all of the technical service, because I'm totally out of my depth on this. I encourage anyone to take a look at selling benefits, even if you're not interested in sailing, because there's a lot of wisdom in there and a lot of general wisdom, not just insurance or group insurance wisdom. And again, I encourage you to contact me if you know other people who we should be interviewing for this program. Thank you very much. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a great week.